Okay, let's talk about college applications. If you've ever felt that insane, crushing pressure, then you are in exactly the right place. We're about to dive into a strategy that pretty much flips everything you've heard on its head. So let's just get right into it.
I mean, this is the feeling, right? It's this overwhelming sense that to get into one of those top schools, you have to do something just monumental, practically impossible. And honestly, it's a huge source of anxiety for students and parents everywhere.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Easy? Are you kidding me? But just stick with me for a second. What if the entire way we think about college admissions is just wrong? What if the path isn't about working harder, but just thinking differently?
To really get the solution, we first have to break down the problem. And the problem is built on this really persistent myth about what colleges are actually looking for in a student. Think about it. Every single year, you have thousands and thousands of students just scrambling to build that perfect application. They're aiming for this flawless resume, trying to check every single box they think an admissions officer has on their list. The pressure is it's enormous. And what's the one piece of advice they almost always get? Be well-rounded. You've heard it a million times, I'm sure. Join this team, play that sport, do some volunteer work, get great grades. The idea is to be pretty good at a whole lot of different things.
And this is what well-rounded actually looks like in the real world. You end up stretching yourself totally thin. You become the president of the cornhole club, not because you're passionate about cornhole, but because, well, it's another line on your resume. It's a box to check.
And here is the absolute peak question. When thousands of other students are all following the exact same advice, does anybody really stand out? Or do you all just start to look identical? You become a walking, talking checklist of activities, not a memorable person. So if being well-rounded is just a recipe for blending in, what's the alternative? Well, this is where we bring in a totally new concept, and it's called the spike.
The spike method is actually super simple. Instead of being kind of good at 10 different things, you focus on becoming truly exceptional at one thing. The goal is to be in the top 1% in a very specific niche. And honestly, it's often better if it's something a little weird.
And the options for a spike are just fascinating. It could be competitive knitting. It could be becoming an absolute wizard at Tetris. But look, it's not just about playing the game. It's about becoming, let's say, the #1 ranked Tetris player in your entire state. That is specific, it's measurable, and it's deeply impressive.
And this really gets to the heart of it. See, colleges aren't trying to build a class full of well-rounded students. They're trying to build a well-rounded class that's full of unique, spiky individuals. They need the future physicist, sure, but they also need the future artist, the entrepreneur, and yeah, maybe even that master knitter who starts a campus-wide knitting revolution.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually build a spike from the ground up? Let's walk through a really practical, real-world example to see exactly how it's done.
We are not starting with curing a disease or writing a hit song. We're starting with a simple summer job, pressure washing driveways. I know, it sounds pretty mundane, but just watch how we can turn this into a really powerful spike.
So here's the formula. First, you don't just do it for your parents. You turn it into a small business. You're actually earning money. That shows initiative. Second, you become an expert. You don't just spray water. You're researching nozzles, pressures, eco-friendly detergents. You're finding the absolute best way to do it. And finally, you tell that story in your college essay. A story about curiosity, about optimization, about entrepreneurship.
You see what just happened? A boring job just became an incredible narrative. An admissions officer isn't reading about another kid who volunteered at the local library. They're reading about a micro-expert who found a problem, mastered it, and built something from nothing. You are now the pressure-washing kid, and I guarantee you that is unforgettable.
Okay, so let's tie this all together. What is the fundamental difference between the old way of doing things and the spike method? Let's just put them right next to each other. On the left, you've got the well-rounded applicant. They're the cornhole club president, doing a little bit of everything, just desperately trying to check off all the boxes. And on the right, you've got the spiky applicant, the #1 Tetris player in Ohio. They go deep on one single thing, and instead of a checklist, they have a compelling story. I mean, which one do you think is more memorable?
So here's the bottom line. The goal of your application is not to be a perfect, flawless candidate. The goal is to be interesting. It's to give that tired admissions officer who's read 100 applications that day a reason to stop, put your file aside, and just say, wow, okay, I have to meet this person. And that really brings us to the final question, the one that actually matters. Forget what you think you should be doing. What is that one weird, interesting thing that you can get completely passionate about? What's that one niche where you can become truly exceptional? So, what's your spike?
Okay, let's talk about the word networking. Just hearing it, does it make you cringe a little? For so many of us, it brings up these images of, stuffy rooms, fake smiles, and just this deep, deep feeling of awkwardness. If that sounds familiar, then you're in the right place. We're going to break down why it feels so wrong and look at a way to make it feel, well, right.
And yeah, let's just start by saying that feeling you have, it's totally valid. Because a lot of the professional world really can feel like this, can it? A dystopian simulation where we're all just kind of performing. This quote just hits the nail on the head. It feels fake because a lot of the time, it is.
You know the drill. You walk into a room, you put on your professional costume, and the show begins. You're trying to act smart but not arrogant, interested but not, desperate. And here's the thing. Everyone else in the room is doing the exact same dance. It's not really a conversation. It's more like a weird play where everyone is trying to figure out, what can this person do for me?
And this really gets to the heart of the problem, the huge gap between what we're told networking is and what it actually feels like. The expectation is strategic alliances and meaningful connections, but the reality? Yeah, awkward robot cosplay feels about right. It's just a bunch of cringy conversations that make you want to disappear. And these are the classic moves, aren't they? The things that give networking such a bad name. We've all seen it. The person who's practically throwing their business cards at you. The forced talk about synergy. And oh my gosh, the worst one of all, treating people like they're just another rung on your career ladder. It feels gross because it is gross. It's all transaction, no connection.
So if that's the problem, if we're all stuck in this awful simulation that nobody actually enjoys, how do we break out? What's the secret to getting past all that cringe and, actually connecting with people for real? This is it. Seriously, that's the secret. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But that's the whole point. The goal isn't to network. The goal is to make a friend. It's about showing up with real curiosity, wanting to build an actual relationship, not just collect another contact for your phone.
And this is so crucial. We have to stop looking for little tricks and shortcuts to hack our way into a relationship. That's not how people work. But there is a really cool, well-known psychological principle we can use that helps build that genuine goodwill, almost like magic.
It's called the Benjamin Franklin effect. And the way it works is kind of backwards, but fascinating. The big idea is this. When we do a favor for someone, our brain has to justify why we did it. So it tells itself, well, I wouldn't have helped someone I dislike, so I must actually like this person. It's wild, right? The act of giving actually creates the feeling of liking. So here's how you can see it play out. First, you ask for a small, super easy favor, something that's no big deal for them to do. Second, they do it. Third, their brain goes into justification mode. And fourth, it lands on the simplest answer. Hey, I must like this person. It's such a subtle but powerful way to shift the entire dynamic from a transaction to a real connection.
Okay, so the theory is cool. But what does this actually look like in real life? Because the kind of favor you ask is everything. I mean, you can't just go up to a CEO and ask for help moving your apartment this weekend. So what's the right kind of ask?
And here is the absolutely brilliant and kind of weird example from the source material. Just imagine asking someone this at a conference. It is completely out of left field. You're not asking for a job. You're not asking for money. It's just a small, quirky request that shatters that boring old networking script.
And here's why this is pretty much genius. First, it's a super small ask. They can easily say, sorry, can't help you, with zero awkwardness. Second, it's so weird that it makes you memorable. And third, and this is key, it's obviously not a sneaky way to get something professional out of them. But the best part? Their first reaction is probably going to be, why? And boom, just like that, you're having a real conversation.
Okay, but before you run out and start asking everyone about their favorite power tools, there's one massive, non-negotiable rule to all of this. This is the thing that keeps it from being just another sneaky manipulation tactic.
Your reason for asking has to be real. Your intent has to be genuine. If you're only asking for a small favor because you're planning a bigger ask later, people can smell that a mile away. This whole thing is about building a connection, not using someone. A genuine ask opens the door. A hidden transaction, no matter how clever, almost always slams it shut.
Because the second you do that, the second it becomes a transaction, you are right back in that dystopian simulation. It's just networking, with all those bad, cringy feelings that come with it. The real magic here is in the authenticity.
And really, that's what this all boils down to. It's about completely reframing your goal. So let's just throw the word networking in the trash. Instead, focus on one simple thing, trying to make a real connection with another person. I promise everything else good will follow from that.
So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. It doesn't have to be about pressure washing, right? It could be asking for a recommendation for a great sci-fi book, or maybe where to find the best coffee near the office. So think about it. What is the smallest, most interesting, most genuine favor you could ask someone this week, just to open the door to a real conversation?
What if I told you that philosophy, that subject with the dusty libraries and the impossible books, is actually easy? Yeah, I know it sounds completely wrong, but we're about to explore a guide that says you already have the single most important tool for tackling life's biggest questions.
I mean, this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures that feeling that philosophy is some kind of exclusive club, and you're not on the list. It's this specific kind of intimidation, and that's exactly what we're pushing back on today. So let's dig into that a little bit. That feeling that it's impossible, it's not just in your head. According to this guide, the whole field has these very real barriers that feel like they're designed to make you feel overwhelmed.
And here are the main culprits, right? First, you've got these 1,000-page monsters that, let's be honest, are a non-starter for most of us. Then you've got theories so dense you feel like you need a secret decoder ring just to get started. And I love this part from the source. The advice is so vague that only someone like Oprah and Socrates could ever follow it. It all just adds up to this feeling of being locked out. And that's really the heart of it. It's a club with a secret password you'll never guess. But what if you could just walk right past the velvet rope? What if it turns out you had a lifetime membership all along?
Okay, so this brings us to the core idea of the handbook, a simple, powerful, and totally accessible solution. It's something you were literally born with, and you don't need a library card or a tuition payment to use it.
It's called the gut feeling. You know that flash of yes or no, right or wrong, that happens before your brain even has a chance to catch up? That's it. The argument is that this raw intuition is an incredibly powerful philosophical tool. It's your unfiltered moral baseline, what you really believe before you start worrying about what you're supposed to believe.
And just look at the contrast here. On one side, you've got the academic way, dense, complex, takes years of study. On the other side, the gut feeling. It's instant, it's simple, no reading list, and best of all, it's already built right in. This totally reframes philosophy. It's not something you have to learn. It's something you just have to access.
Okay, this is my favorite line from the source material because it's so blunt and so true. Now, this is part of a famous thought experiment, but the point is you do not need to read a single page of some old philosopher to have a visceral, immediate reaction to that idea. Your gut does all the heavy lifting for you.
All right, so if we have this tool, how do we practice using it? Well, our guide suggests a perfect little exercise, using what it calls the only philosophical problem you'll ever need to get started.
You probably heard of it, right? And there's a reason it's so famous. The trolley problem is basically the perfect gym for your gut feeling. It's easy to understand, impossible to forget, and it forces you to make an immediate choice.
Okay, really picture this for a second. There's a trolley, completely out of control, just barreling down the tracks. And up ahead, there are 5 people tied up who can't move. They are in serious, immediate danger. The stakes are as high as they get. And there you are, standing right next to a lever. You can take one action. If you pull that lever, the trolley switches tracks. You save the 5 people, but the single person on that other track will die. So what do? Don't overthink it. What's your very first instinct? Whatever just flashed in your mind, pull it, don't touch it, that's the answer. That right there is your gut feeling in action. In that one instant, you just engaged in ethical philosophy without opening a single book. That's the whole point.
So you just had that gut reaction. You've used the tool. But what's the point? How does thinking about a runaway trolley actually help you in the real world? Well, this guide says it's not about solving pretend problems, it's about starting real conversations.
And here is the practical payoff. The goal isn't to win debates or become a professor. It's much simpler. It's to have interesting conversations, share what you think, and yeah, sound smart doing it, all without being that person at the party that everyone tries to get away from.
And the process is so simple. First, you bring up an easy dilemma, like the trolley problem. Second, you just say what your gut feeling was. Honestly, my first instinct is to pull the lever because saving 5 seems better than 1. And third, and this is the most important step, you listen. You actually listen to what the other person thinks. It's a conversation starter, not a lecture. And to make sure it stays a conversation, the source gives some golden rules on what to avoid. Never, ever, ever start a sentence with, "Well, actually." Don't pretend you've read all those 1,000-page books. And above all, just don't be obnoxious. The point here is to connect with someone, not to correct them. So let's bring all this together. What's the really big takeaway from this whole common sense approach to philosophy? The message is really that you are already equipped. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need a fancy degree to think about life's biggest questions. A simple tool like the trolley problem and the intuition you already have, that's powerful enough to open the door. And so I'll leave you with this to think about. Is this simple, intuitive approach the whole story? Is that gut feeling the only tool you'll ever need? Or does it just get you into the conversation, while maybe, just maybe, the deep and difficult wisdom in those 1,000-page books gives you the tools to navigate it? What do you think?